A crisp Monday morning in downtown Chicago. The gleaming glass doors of premier financial group swing open as customers file in, clutching their coffee cups and checking their phones. The marble floors echo with clicking heels and hushed conversations. Just another ordinary day at one of the city's most prestigious banks, or so everyone thought. A well-dressed man in a tailored charcoal suit approaches the velvet rope line, his Italian leather briefcase catching the morning light. His shoulders carry the confident posture of someone who's closed million-dollar deals before breakfast, yet there's a hint of warmth in his eyes that speaks of humble beginnings. What happens next would spark a viral moment that forces America to confront an uncomfortable truth about assumptions, privilege, and power. "I'll need to see some additional identification," the teller announces loudly, her voice carrying across the lobby. Other customers glance up from their phones, watching as the man calmly reaches for his wallet. He's been through this before. The extra scrutiny, the subtle shifts in tone, the sideways glances. But today is different. Today, he isn't just another customer. Security guards move closer, their hands resting on their belts. A branch manager emerges from her office, clipboard in hand, ready to handle the situation. The man's credentials are questioned, his presence treated like an intrusion. With each passing minute, the tension in the air grows thicker. Other customers are waved through with simple nods and smiles, while he faces an impromptu interrogation about his banking needs. What the staff doesn't realize is that just last week, this same man sat in a boardroom on the 47th floor of their corporate headquarters. His signature now graces the bottom of their paychecks. The title Executive Vice President of Regional Operations sits beneath his name on the company letterhead. But here, on the ground floor of his own bank, he's being treated like an unwelcome stranger. "Perhaps you'd be more comfortable visiting one of our other branches," the manager suggests, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. The irony of the situation isn't lost on him. He's spent the last 15 years climbing the corporate ladder, breaking barriers, and reshaping banking policies to be more inclusive. He's led diversity initiatives, mentored countless young professionals, and transformed customer service protocols. And yet, here he stands, experiencing firsthand why his work is still so desperately needed. The security guard takes a step closer. Customers pretend not to stare, but their discomfort is palpable. Some look away, others record discreetly with their phones, sensing they're witnessing something significant. The man maintains his composure, years of boardroom negotiations having taught him the power of staying calm under pressure. What happens next will not only transform this branch, but spark a national conversation about unconscious bias in the banking industry. It will make headlines, flood social media feeds, and force institutions across the country to take a hard look in the mirror. But more importantly, it will remind us that appearances can be deceiving and assumptions can cost more than just a customer. They can cost us our humanity. The man reaches into his suit pocket one last time, not for his ID, but for something that will leave everyone in that lobby speechless. In his hand, he holds a small card that's about to turn this Monday morning into a watershed moment for Premier Financial Group. The tension in the air is electric, the silence deafening, as he prepares to reveal his true identity. But before he can speak, the branch manager makes one final mistake, one that will go viral within hours and become a teachable moment viewed by millions. As security moves to escort him out, little do they know they're about to learn a lesson about judgment that no corporate training could ever teach. This is more than just a story about mistaken identity. It's a mirror held up to society, reflecting our biases, our prejudices, and ultimately, our potential for change. What unfolds next will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about power, privilege, and the price of prejudice in modern America. The sleek business card in his hand catches the light, and for a moment, time seems to stand still in the marble-floored lobby. The branch manager's eyes widen as they fall on the embossed gold lettering. Her clipboard slips slightly in her grasp, but she catches it before it can clatter to the floor. The security guard's confident stance falters, his hand dropping from his belt. Looking back, perhaps it was the universe's sense of irony that this particular branch was chosen for today's surprise executive visit. Just last month, this location had received multiple complaints about discriminatory treatment, all quietly filed away in HR folders. But paperwork and statistics can't capture the raw human experience unfolding in this moment. 3 years ago, this same man had started as a junior executive, bringing with him bold ideas about community banking and financial inclusion. He'd grown up watching his grandmother stuff cash under her mattress because she didn't trust banks, not after being turned away one too many times in the 1960s. That memory fueled his rise through the ranks, driving him to create change from within. His proposal for neighborhood financial literacy programs had initially been met with skepticism in the boardroom. That's not our target demographic, they'd said. But he persisted, backing his passion with hard data showing the untapped potential in underserved communities. Within 18 months, his initiatives had brought in over $50 million in new accounts and transformed 3 struggling branches into profitable centers of community banking. The tension in the lobby grows thicker as other employees begin to gather, drawn by the commotion. A young teller who'd been counting her drawer peers around the corner, her face paling as recognition slowly dawns. She'd seen his photo in last week's company-wide email announcing the new executive leadership team, but somehow the connection hadn't clicked until now. Through the glass doors, the morning sun continues to stream in, oblivious to the scene unfolding inside. A line of customers has formed, their phones discreetly recording what they sense might become a viral moment. In their eyes, you can see the all-too-familiar mix of emotions: discomfort, recognition, and that particular kind of second-hand embarrassment that comes from watching authority figures realize they've made a terrible mistake. But this isn't just about one man or one bank branch. It's about the countless similar stories that never make headlines, the daily indignities that don't get captured on camera, the subtle barriers that still exist in spaces that claim to be open to all. The weight of these unspoken experiences hangs heavy in the air. The branch manager's face cycles through a kaleidoscope of emotions: disbelief, embarrassment, fear. Her clipboard now serves as a shield, held tightly against her chest as if it could protect her from what's coming. The security guard has taken 2 steps back, his earlier authority deflating like a punctured balloon. What none of them know is that their actions this morning aligned perfectly with the reason for his unannounced visit. Corporate had been receiving reports about discriminatory practices across several branches, but nothing concrete enough to act on. Sometimes, the only way to understand a problem is to experience it firsthand. As he stands there, perfectly still, the business card still extended in his hand, he thinks about the choice before him. He could unleash the full force of his authority, make examples of everyone involved. Or he could turn this into something more meaningful, a teachable moment that might actually create lasting change. The next few minutes would determine not just the fate of everyone in this branch, but potentially the future direction of one of the country's largest banking institutions. The only question is, what kind of leader would he choose to be? The silence in the lobby breaks when the branch manager finally finds her voice. "Sir, we," she stammers, her professional demeanor crumbling as she stares at the business card that's just turned her world upside down. But before she can formulate a proper response, the elevator doors ping open, and out steps the regional director, the same one who'd been so dismissive of diversity initiatives in last quarter's meetings. The regional director strides forward, his face lighting up with recognition. "What brings you downtown today?" He calls out cheerfully, clearly unaware of what's transpired. The contrast between his warm greeting and the cold treatment from moments ago hangs in the air like a heavy cloud. Every employee in the lobby seems to shrink a little smaller, the weight of their earlier actions pressing down on their shoulders. Through the glass doors, a news van pulls up to the curb. One of the customers must have called them. The story is about to become bigger than anyone anticipated, but the executive remains perfectly still, studying the faces around him. He thinks about his teenage son, who still gets followed around in department stores. He thinks about his mother, who taught him to keep his head held high no matter how others treated him. He thinks about all the qualified candidates he's seen passed over for promotions because they weren't a cultural fit. The security guard's radio crackles with a message from outside about the gathering media presence. Phones continue recording, their little red lights blinking like distant warning beacons. The regional director's smile begins to fade as he reads the room. finally sensing that something is terribly wrong. The young teller who recognized him earlier has tears in her eyes, perhaps seeing her career flash before them. But what nobody notices is the elderly gentleman sitting in the waiting area, watching everything unfold. He's been coming to this branch every Thursday for the past 30 years, quietly observing how different customers are treated. His presence here today isn't a coincidence. He's part of a larger plan that's about to unfold. The executive adjusts his tie, a simple action that makes several people flinch. The power dynamic has shifted so dramatically that even his smallest movements carry weight. He glances at his watch, a gift from his mentor, who'd warned him about days like this. "It's not about the power you have," she'd said, "but how you use it when it matters most." More customers are gathering outside now, drawn by the news van and the growing crowd of onlookers. Social media is already buzzing with partial clips of what happened earlier. The branch manager's hands tremble as she checks her phone, likely seeing the first tweets appear. The regional director steps closer, trying to take control of a situation he doesn't fully understand yet. The executive finally breaks his silence, but not with the thunderous reprimand everyone's expecting. Instead, he reaches into his briefcase and pulls out a folder, one that will either repair or permanently damage the reputation of Premier Financial Group. The contents of that folder represent months of secret investigations, customer complaints, and documented incidents across multiple branches. The tension in the room reaches a breaking point as he opens the folder. The regional director's confident posture wavers as he recognizes some of the documents inside. The branch manager takes an involuntary step backward, and the security guard looks longingly at the exit. What happens next will determine not just their futures, but the future of banking culture across the country. The elderly gentleman in the waiting area stands up, revealing a familiar logo on his briefcase, one that makes the regional director's face turn pale. Everything that's happened this morning, every interaction, every dismissive gesture, every biased assumption has been leading up to this moment. The trap, if you could call it that, wasn't just perfectly laid, it was necessary. The elderly gentleman approaches slowly, each step echoing through the now silent lobby. His briefcase bears the seal of the Federal Banking Commission, the one organization every financial institution fears more than bad press. "I believe," he says, his voice carrying the weight of authority that comes with decades of experience, "this is exactly what we've been investigating." Outside, the media presence has grown from one news van to three, their satellite dishes reaching toward the sky like mechanical flowers searching for sunlight. The regional director's phone buzzes incessantly. Corporate headquarters is calling, but he's frozen in place, watching his carefully constructed world unravel thread by thread. What no one in the room yet realizes is that this morning's incident isn't isolated. Across the city, similar scenes are playing out at 5 other Premier Financial branches. Different executives, different scenarios, but the same underlying issues bubbling to the surface. It's a coordinated effort months in the making, designed to expose not just individual prejudices, but systemic failures. The branch manager's clipboard finally slips from her grasp, clattering to the floor with a sound that makes everyone jump. As she bends to retrieve it, years of performance reviews and customer satisfaction reports spill out, documents that tell a very different story from the one in the executive's folder. Side by side, these papers will paint a picture of institutional blindness that can no longer be ignored. A young intern, who's been quietly observing from behind the customer service desk, steps forward. In her hand is a USB drive containing security footage from the past 6 months, footage she's been quietly collecting, showing pattern after pattern of discriminatory treatment. Her hands shake as she holds it out, but her voice is steady as she says, "I think you need to see this too." The executive exchanges a knowing look with the Federal Banking Commission representative. They'd known about the intern's documentation. In fact, she's been part of the investigation all along, placed here through a special oversight program. Her presence adds another layer to the already complex web of accountability unfolding in the lobby. Through the glass doors, more familiar faces appear, executives from other branches, each carrying similar folders, each accompanied by their own federal representatives. This isn't just about one branch or one incident anymore. It's about to become the largest banking discrimination investigation in the city's history. The regional director's face turns ashen as he recognizes his peers from other branches. These are the same people who'd laughed off his concerns about diversity training at their monthly meetings, who dismissed complaints as oversensitivity, who'd promoted based on cultural fit rather than merit. Now they stand shoulder to shoulder, witnesses to a moment that will redefine banking culture. A soft chime announces another elevator arrival. The doors open to reveal the bank's chief diversity officer, the same person whose recommendations had been repeatedly shelved and whose budget had been cut quarter after quarter. She steps into the lobby carrying a laptop with a presentation that was supposed to be delivered next week to the board of directors. Perhaps, she says, her voice cutting through the tension, we should move this discussion upstairs. But before anyone can move, the executive raises his hand. There's one more piece to this puzzle, one final revelation that will transform this from a local scandal into a national awakening. He reaches for his phone, pulling up an email that was set to be sent automatically at exactly this moment to every Premier Financial employee across the country. The branch manager's phone pings first, followed by a cascade of notification sounds throughout the lobby. Every screen lights up with the same message, a message that will either tear Premier Financial apart or rebuild it into something revolutionary. The tension in the room reaches a fever pitch as people begin to read, their expressions shifting from confusion to disbelief to understanding. This moment, frozen in time between revelation and reaction, holds the power to reshape not just one bank's culture, but the entire industry's approach to equality and inclusion. The question isn't just about what happens next. It's about who they choose to become in response to this carefully orchestrated morning of truth. The email lighting up every screen in the lobby isn't just a message. It's a company-wide announcement of Premier Financial's complete restructuring. The executive had spent months working with the Federal Banking Commission to develop a revolutionary banking equality program. And this branch's discriminatory incident was the final evidence needed to trigger its immediate implementation. Today, he begins, his voice carrying across the now silent lobby, isn't about punishment. It's about transformation. He turns to face the branch manager, whose earlier arrogance has melted into a mix of shame and understanding. Sometimes we need to experience our failures to truly commit to change. The security guard removes his badge slowly, expecting the worst, but the executive shakes his head. Keep it. You'll need it for your new role in our community outreach program. The chief diversity officer steps forward, opening her laptop to reveal not just a presentation, but a comprehensive training platform already loaded with thousands of real customer experiences, including footage from this very morning. Every employee, she announces, from CEO to teller, will go through this program. But more importantly, they'll spend time working in communities they've overlooked. Outside, the media crews are getting their first glimpse of something unexpected. Dozens of community leaders and local business owners arriving in waves. They're not here to protest, but to participate. Each carries an invitation to join Premier Financial's new Community Banking Council, a governing body with real power to shape policy and approve practices. The regional director, still processing everything, reaches for his phone one last time, but the executive stops him. Corporate already knows. In fact, he pauses, allowing himself a small smile. They're learning about their new positions right now. The restructuring isn't just affecting this branch, it's reaching all the way to the top. The young intern steps forward again, but this time she's not alone. Behind her, on tablets and phones throughout the lobby, faces appear on video calls. Interns from every branch in the city, each with their own documentation, their own stories, their own evidence of the changes needed. What seemed like a singular incident has become a chorus of voices demanding accountability. But the biggest surprise comes from the elderly Federal Banking Commission representative. He reaches into his briefcase and pulls out not another damning report, but a blueprint for something unprecedented. A banking industry oversight committee led by community members, with real power to audit, investigate, and enforce equitable banking practices across all financial institutions. The executive's phone buzzes one final time, a message that makes him pause. He looks up at the gathered crowd, at the faces showing everything from fear to hope, and makes an announcement that catches everyone off guard. Premier Financial isn't just changing its policies, he declares. We're changing ownership structure. Starting today, 30% of company shares are being transferred to a community trust, giving our customers a real voice in how their bank operates. The branch manager, who'd been bracing for termination, suddenly understands. Her new role won't be about enforcing rules, but about building bridges. The security guard's new position isn't about watching customers, but about ensuring every person who walks through those doors feels safe and respected. As the morning sun climbs higher, casting long shadows across the lobby's marble floors, the tension begins to transform into something else. Possibility. The news crews outside are getting their story, but it's not the scandal they expected. Instead, they're witnessing the beginning of a revolution in banking, sparked by one man's experience but fueled by countless untold stories. The executive tucks his business card back into his pocket. It won't be needed anymore, not as a symbol of authority, but as a reminder of this morning. Because starting today, authority at Premier Financial isn't coming from titles or positions. It's coming from a commitment to real, measurable change. Just then, the elevator chimes one final time. As the doors open, everyone turns, expecting another revelation. What steps out instead becomes the perfect punctuation mark to this transformative morning, something that proves this isn't just about banking, but about fundamental human dignity and respect. Out of the elevator steps a young family, the same family who'd been denied a home loan at this very branch just 6 months ago, despite their perfect credit score and solid income. But today, they're here for a different reason. The father holds up a set of house keys, a symbol of their recently approved mortgage, processed through Premier Financial's new Community First lending program, which had been quietly piloted in select branches during the investigation. The branch manager, recognizing them immediately, feels the full weight of her past decisions. She'd been the one to reject their application, citing insufficient community ties, a criteria that had now been exposed as a thinly veiled excuse for discrimination. The young couple's presence serves as both a reminder of past failures and a beacon of future possibilities. News of the morning's events spreads quickly through financial circles. By noon, 3 other major banks have reached out, not with condemnation but with questions about implementing similar programs. The ripple effect is immediate and unprecedented. The stock market responds not with panic, but with cautious optimism. Premier Financial shares actually rise as investors recognize the long-term value of ethical banking practices. The executive gathers everyone in the lobby: employees, customers, media, and community leaders. Banking isn't just about money, he says, his voice carrying the weight of personal experience. It's about trust, dignity, and the belief that everyone deserves a fair chance at building their future. The young intern who'd helped document the discrimination stands a little taller, knowing her courage helped catalyze this change. 1 week later, the branch looks different. The velvet ropes are gone, replaced by open spaces and comfortable seating areas. The security guard, now wearing a community relations badge, greets each customer by name. The branch manager leads daily training sessions, sharing her own journey from bias to understanding. But most importantly, the customers are different, more diverse, more confident, more trusting. The Federal Banking Commission's report, released a month after the incident, becomes required reading at business schools across the country. Premier Financial's transformation is studied not as a cautionary tale, but as a blueprint for institutional change. The executive's approach, using personal experience to drive systemic reform rather than seeking punishment, becomes known as the Premier method of corporate transformation. 6 months later, at Premier Financial's annual shareholder meeting, the results speak for themselves. Customer satisfaction scores have soared. Loan approval rates show no racial disparities for the first time in the bank's history. The Community Banking Council has approved innovative new products designed specifically for underserved populations. But the most telling statistic is the simplest. Employee turnover has dropped to near zero. The branch manager, now promoted to Director of Community Relations, often shares her story at banking conferences. "We thought we were just doing business," she reflects, "but we were actually building barriers. Now we're building bridges." The security guard, speaking at the same conferences, puts it more simply. We learn to see people, not profiles. As for the executive, he keeps that fateful business card framed on his wall, next to a photo of his grandmother. Her distrust of banks had sparked his career. Now her story helps fuel an industry-wide revolution. But his proudest achievement isn't the policy changes or the awards. It's the simple fact that every day, in branches across the city, people walk into Premier Financial feeling not like customers, but like members of a community. The story of that Monday morning lives on, not just as a viral video or a case study, but as a reminder that real change starts with facing uncomfortable truths. At Premier Financial, they now say that banking isn't about the money you have. It's about the humanity you show. And that's a lesson worth more than any deposit.